Welcome to MAP, the bi-weekly market access podcast provided by Mars Market Access and Pricing Strategy, which is your healthcare consultancy in the German-speaking markets. Mars makes it as easy as possible for you to get your pharmaceutical, medtech, or digital health product to the market and, of course, get the price it deserves. My name is Stefan Walzer. I'm the founder of Mars and a health economist by training and working in the fields of market access, reimbursement, pricing, and health economics already since 2004. And now let's learn about the market access and reimbursement systems around the globe. The German elections coming up in autumn 2021. What could we expect, especially when keeping an eye on market access, healthcare reimbursement, and obviously the kind of impact on the pricing bit? I think first of all, what will really change also from a political perspective? Quite clearly, the most important piece and the most important information for everybody listening to it is that Germany will get a new chancellor for sure. Angela Merkel will no more be the chancellor after the elections. She's not going to the race again. I mean, she was the chancellor for 16 years by then, and will get then a new chancellor, most likely one of either the Conservatives, the CDU, the Social Democrats, the SPD, or one of the Greens, which is quite interesting. The kind of, let's say, forecasts, the kind of polls are also showing a lot of variety, also and especially, maybe interestingly, not so much yet from the content-driven, but there are changes also in the kind of forecast so far in terms of the election outcomes. There was a couple of months ago, the Greens were clearly in front before the Conservatives. Then there was a kind of hit, a couple of discussions around the candidate by the Greens, changing more again into the favor of the Conservatives. And nowadays, as of end of August, beginning of September 2021, there's even the consolation that the Social Democrats are now in favor of the potential voters, with roughly 22 to 24%, depending which kind of numbers were taken, but just few percentage points in front before the Conservatives, but also the Greens are still in the race to go. I think that's very interesting, obviously, to see what this might really have kind of impact, and also which kind of coalitions might obviously be doable. I think beginning of July, it clearly looked that it might be probably the kind of coalition between the Conservatives and the Greens. I think even before that, in late spring, it looked more that the Greens might have the choices with whom to have a coalition. Nowadays, it rather looks that we might have three parties into the coalition, where then obviously as well, for example, the Liberals and even the kind of left party, the Linke, is currently being debated on, at least with some of the parties which are going to the elections. Anyhow, what does it really mean for healthcare? Interestingly, when we have a look at the various kind of programs by the political parties, you see and read a lot about integrated care, prevention, digitalization. Liberals also making up, obviously, for startups. The Conservatives even speak about, at least in a sentence, about virtual hospitals, AI, obviously, but also, for example, the Greens are speaking about integrated care, patient focus, DRG changes, quite interestingly, and not to forget, but let's just say it and state it, the left are also speaking about the maximum pharma pricing. I think unrealistic that they will really make it, also with that kind of idea, but just to mention it. So what does it really then mean when we go really more into the details? Because obviously in the programs, it's not really a lot of content in there to discuss about it. Very important keeping in mind here also is the potential various negative effects on tax income in the last couple of months. Quite obvious and quite evident that this is the COVID situation, but also, for example, the whole kind of flood issue, what we had earlier in July, for example, in North Rhine-Westphalia, which obviously as well have had and will have a further kind of big budget impact in terms of tax incomes and obviously also in terms of the expenses. So all stakeholders with whom we spoke, and I agree with them, expect an entry into force of a saving law once a new government is into the game. So likely changes, probably even independent of a new coalition. We might even see it until the end of 2022. I think this is quite logic, I would say. The biggest kind of threat is that there's no automatic added benefit for orphan drugs anymore within the AMNOG process. I think some even speak about that this could come as early as April 2021. There might be even no more a free pricing at launch, or at least, this is probably more likely, because then this is more easily to be implemented then, that there might be paybacks of the difference between the negotiated and the launch price back to the launch day, which is obviously a bigger kind of impact for the pharmaceutical area. For the digital health area, we might see more that a fixed amount grouping for comparable DIGAs might come, especially for those with a comparable efficacy. We need as well to see which kind of price impact the currently running price negotiations in the DIGA area would also have a kind of impact, and quite clearly also for the DPAS, which is the digitale Pflegeanwendung, so is the care applications, might probably have a very similar system to the DIGA, which is probably more kind of positive effect. And in medical devices, most likely, at least as of now, there will not be, at least no major changes to be expected. I think the biggest one are probably the ones we mentioned, and quite clearly there might be even a bigger discount then, a mandatory discount for the various kind of products, especially for drugs coming after the elections. The elephant in the room still, and we will discuss that then as well in a minute, is the citizens insurance system, the Bürgerversicherung. It's a kind of NHS system which is favored by the, let's say, the left-wing parties, Social Democrats, the Greens, and obviously from the Linke, and the still kind of dual system with the statutory and the private health insurances, which is obviously then favored from the Conservatives and the Liberals. So you see already with that constellation, I think likelihood is not that high, and we have also heard that already in the webinars. So then let's just move over as well to our podcast discussion, this time with Professor Dr. Uwe Wagschal. He's a professor of politics at the University of Freiburg, and he has as well working on various kind of election swipers, etc. So we'll just see what the current kind of situation is as of early September, so 3 to 4 weeks before the actual elections happening. Let's just see what he thinks would be the outcomes. Professor Wagschal from the University of Freiburg, thank you for your time, and especially now quite shortly before the elections happening here in Germany. Just give us the latest news, let's say. How do the current forecasts look like with respect maybe to the new chancellor in Germany?
Well, the forecasts have changed over the past months, I would say rather drastically. Currently, the Christian Democrats are about 20%, maybe a little bit more in some institutes. And the polls for the SPD are rather bright concerning the history. So they have surpassed the Christian Democrats. They are now 25%. And the Greens, well, the Greens are not as good as they've been 4 or 5 months ago. Currently, they are between 15 and 18 percentage points concerning the polls. So there have been times they have been above 20%, but that was exaggerated. So when they claimed they would be able to have a change in Germany and with a new candidates and so on and so forth. And on the fourth place, probably the AfD, around 12%. And the Liberals, 12-13%, they are quite close. And according to statistical interference, it's not really likely who will be on the fourth place. So they are more or less the same area on the last, so to say, the sixth rank. It's the left, the Linke, around 6%. But what is really striking, we have so-called others, Sonstigen, so the rest of the pack, so to say. 12%. This is really, really high in the German history. And maybe there's a small likelihood that the Freien Wähler, the Free Voters, which is a moderate liberal center party, is around 3 to 4%. So they have a chance to pass the 5% threshold to get into the parliament. But that's I would say a higher uncertainty that will reach the 5%, since they're more strong in the south of Germany than the northern part of Germany. And probably they might get 5% in Bavaria, 5% in Rhineland-Palatinate and then Baden-Württemberg. But all the others would be hard there. So that's the current polls. But to continue, maybe to give some insights, polls are always uncertain, and we've seen a big variance over the past weeks, as I said in the beginning. And we have also problems with the polls. I want just to recall you that we have had elections in June in Sachsen-Anhalt, which is a small state in the eastern part of Germany. And just 3-4 days before the elections, the polls said the Christian Democrats would get 27%, and the election day they got 37%. So that was a big mistake of 10 percentage points. And we've seen such mistakes of the pollsters over the past years several times. So, and this has to do, of course, with methodological issues, with the size of the polls, and with the political weighting of the polls. And the institute, sometimes they're leaning more to the left, sometimes they're leaning to the right. So we have a big variance between the institutes, and we have around 8 pollster institutes in Germany. And so probably also, another point which I want to raise is that they have different methods to collect the data. So sometimes they're using telephones. And as we all know, 35% of the population don't have a telephone with line. They have cell phones, which is difficult for pollsters. And sometimes they're using only internet, like YouGov, they use only internet. Sometimes they're mixing, so to say. And the fourth method is interviews, which is conducted by the Allensbach Institute. And so you see we have 4 methods to collect data, and this is also an explanation why we have, I would say, some unclear messages concerning the percentages in the end.
Yeah, very interesting. I mean, so one could say that we currently don't have a statistically significant difference between maybe the first 3 parties?
According to statistics, we have an error margin of around 3, depending on the size, and so around 3 percentage points, roughly. So by statistical inference, you can't say when you have 21% or 24% who is in the end just in front. So that's just by calculating. You have some margin, some brackets, and so the brackets are overlapping. And in the end, it's difficult to say, and it's not possible to say who is in the end leading. We have more likelihood, of course, that the party who's leading will be the winner, but by statistical, so to say, reasoning, it can also be the case that the second-ranked party can be in front of the other one. And this is the case currently with the situation Christian Democrats versus Social Democrats. Whereas the Greens, when they have only 15%, they are, so to say, their brackets are just much lower than those of the Social Democrats. So it's only a case maybe between Greens and Christian Democrats who will be second. But I would bet a lot of money that the Christian Democrats will be in front of the Greens, because their second votes in Saarland would not be counted. That's 1 percentage point less. And we know that when election is approaching, there's a kind of rally around the flag effect. And historically, Christian Democrats are the strongest party in Germany. And you see all the internet surveys, they leave out many of the elderly. And so the average voting age is around 56, 57, at least a little bit higher for the Christian Democrats. So the elderly are going probably to deliver again for the Christian Democrats. And you will see in the end, they will be in the end much higher than the 20%, which are now forecasted by most of the pollsters.
Yeah, and I think it's something what we have seen probably also some years ago in the elections in North Rhine-Westphalia. By the way, also with the current kind of run with the CDU, with Armin Laschet, right?
So myself, my institute, we're running Politikpanel Deutschland, and we have seen similar effects. So especially elderly tending to vote for Christian Democrats, and the younger more for the Greens. But you see the Greens are not very liked within the ranks of the elderly people, right? So we have kind of overestimating for the Greens and underestimating for the Christian Democrats, because when you use the internet for collecting the data, the elderly are not just in your data set.
Yeah, exactly.
and the other ones are overrepresented. Therefore, you have to figure into account. You can do it by weighting. You can do political weighting. But we've seen also in the past that political weighting is difficult, and also weighting by the social demographic factors like age, gender, region where you're coming from. This can also interfere to some extent, and it's a tricky business. Weighting by social demographic factors and weighting by political factors.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. That's true. So do you expect any, let's say, maybe even further major changes with respect to the forecast in the next weeks until the election? I mean, there was quite a big change, let's say, between June, July, and early September.
Yes, and that's, as I said several times now, it's quite surprising that we have this huge variance within the data, within the published data. And, you might say we have also changes in the society. So religious affiliation goes down. That is not working for the Christian Democrats, but we have also a change in society. Another fact that the media, we see a clear polarization between the media. Some are really in favor of the Greens, and some more the conservative ones. They are like Bild Zeitung. They're now arguing for the Christian Democrats. And this will also have some effects. And now the prominence, people from culture, from sports, they're living their so to say, advice how to vote and whom to vote, and so that might influence also the situation. But as I said, when election day is approaching, we have this rally around the flag effect, and this might help the Christian Democrats some extent, maybe also the Social Democrats, since they have, so to say, the largest bulk of STEM voters for their party. But you don't know what will happen in politics with scandals and new scandals and corruption maybe. And so these short-term effects will have an effect. But on the other hand, you can now vote. We have started voting. The voting process has started since 2 weeks, I think. And so many are casting their votes. And this, of course, these voters are gone, so they're out of interest, and so they have casted their vote, and so that has also been taken into account. So we will see probably a much higher figure for these letter voters, and so this has also kind of effect, since when now the situation is working more for the Social Democrats and for the Greens, probably more Greens and the Social Democrats will be in this letter postal voting. So another factor is the more educated are voting with postal voting, and more Greens are voting postal voting. So these can also be seen in the past data, which is known and published.
Interesting. Very good. So maybe moving a bit away from the, let's say, individual results of the parties towards obviously what we're all looking forward, what will be potentially the new government, meaning which coalition might be potentially likely as of September 6th. 2021? Big question mark.
Yeah. So first of all, 50% is needed to form the government, but 50% of seats in the parliament. So we have to deduct the lost votes, so all parties under 5%. So we have 40 parties running with lists plus 7 other parties just only for candidates. So 47 parties in Germany, that is a historical high. And probably only 6 will enter the parliament, right, if we take the Christian Democrats together. That means 40 parties are not entering, 34 parties are not entering, and these are wasted votes. And 12% wasted vote means that you need 45% of seats in parliament to form the government. And currently, the Grand Coalition will be possible, but with a different sign, so that the Social Democrats, when the Social Democrats will be stronger than the Christian Democrats, so the Grand Coalition will be in place. So that is probably the most likely situation. However, we also have the situation that we might have left-green government, which was also a majority, even stronger, with around 50%, 52%. Well, we have different signs in that direction. So sometimes the Social Democrats said yes, but then the scandal came with Afghanistan, and they said no, the Social Democrats. So we have, so to say, a certain likelihood that this will be an effect, but also a kind of likelihood that a left-green government will not be formed. But currently, I would place my bet for a Grand Coalition. However, on the other hand, we can also form governments with when the Grand Coalition is not in place, either with the Greens or with the Liberals as partners. So then we have a 3-party government, and this is also probably possible, right? If currently the Grand Coalition is around 45%, it's quite narrow that they will reach, and I think it's clear you need a strong and stable government for the future. And when it's only 3-4, a margin only of 3 or 4 parliamentarians, well, that's would be a problem. However, what we'll see historically is that probably the largest parliament ever. Currently, the size of the parliament should only be 598, but so in the last 4 years, the parliament had been a size of 709, and I would guess the situation as it is these days, we're approaching 800 parliamentarians. So that would be a disaster also for communication. So
yes.
A very expensive one, and double the size, or only maybe 60% larger than the constitutional size of the parliament. That's not a good sign for democracy, right? You have to change the electoral laws to make it more fair for the public to say.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, you also just brought up, I think, a very good point. I think we need to have a stable government in the future. I mean, how fast do you think we could really have them, again, a really new government in place?
That's a really, really interesting question, since the last government was formed after half a year. So it was
exactly.
almost 180 days almost. So that's half a year. That was the longest. Historically, Germany takes place 90 days, 3 months. That's the average, I would say, and the last 20 years. But we see also tendency that the duration of government, forming government, is increasing. The reason is we have a higher fragmentation of the political system, the higher fragmentation of the parliament, of course. More parties, so we will have at least 6 parties, maybe 7. And maybe when you look in other European countries, like Netherlands or so, they're just negotiating since 7 months, I think. They have 17 parties in parliament. You see, if you want to make a political system fairer and fairer, you can look to Belgium, you can look to Netherlands, and then you see the disaster. You have maybe a very fair electoral system, but in the end, you will not be able to form a government. Political systems have to deliver, have to form effective governments. And this is not taken into consideration in all these discussions about fair electoral systems. So you have to form government. So that was historically the point for the majority rule in Great Britain. So they can form a government within 1 week, even in 3 days or so. That's their time span, and not 6 months. And that's a huge problem, I think, when we have economic crisis, political crisis. You see, we have 4 years for a term. And if you lose 6 months, government formation, negotiation processes, maybe then the parties saying no. You see all these democratic processes within the parties have to take place then again. So the parties are asked, and there had to be a vote, maybe a complicated vote, and then it takes another 3-4 weeks, and then we will have a caretaker government with Angela Merkel. Angela Merkel will rule, I promise, at least 4 months more. So we'll probably will have a new government after Christmas, not before Christmas.
Interesting. Yeah, but I think that makes a lot of sense also with the explanations. And I mean, let's just also see, I guess, and obviously it will be mainly driven by the results. I mean, which kind of coalition might potentially be built up and which options are also open, right? For the winner, especially. Just
look at the coalition treaties. So we started first coalition treaty, that was 1961, 7 pages. That was a funny paper to read, 7 pages. And now we are approaching 200 pages.
Oh, wow.
And they have to negotiate 200 pages and to say, well, of course, they have the party platforms, the programs, and so on and so forth. But there will be tough negotiations, the groups negotiating, becoming even more. I think it was the first coalition negotiation between the Greens and the Social Democrats with Schröder. That was, I think, only 8 or 16 persons. The last time was more than 100.
Yeah. How do you want to negotiate with 100 people?
Yeah, you see where you have veto players, you have different party organizations, and the young Greens are saying, no, as they have said already, so I'm not kidding, they've said we don't want a coalition with the Christian Democrats, the young Greens, and then, well, you have all these guys and in the negotiation process, and they have a kind of veto, and then it will be difficult to reach negotiation. Greens, Christian Democrats, we knew it's maybe only 40%. If I look at my data from the Wahlswiper, so a voting advice application, so we see only a cross between two parties of about 40%. Of course, the Greens and the Social Democrats are higher, or the left are even higher. But then negotiations are difficult. And with more veto players, more negotiators, more subgroups, that will be, I promise, difficult. And it will not take place before Christmas. That's my bet.
Okay, let's just see for 2022. Okay, I mean, we have quite a good number of listeners, obviously, out of the healthcare area. And so one of the last questions might be just also going to that kind of direction. What impact do you expect generally for the healthcare market by a potential new government? Obviously, knowing that we don't know who might be the new government.
Yeah, so if we have a left government, so the green, red, we will probably change in the private health insurance. So that would be hard times for private health insurers. That's my bet. And we will get a general citizens insurance. Not maybe the British style with the NHS, but maybe leaning toward that direction with a state-run administered insurance scheme that will change a lot of things in the market. And if we have a government formed by Christian Democrats, Social Democrats, nothing will change. The stakeholders and the veto players are too strong in this. But when we have a left government, then we have a problem. When the liberals are entering the government, I would say they will also block such a change for a citizen. Looking at other minor facts, which I have read in the party platforms, probably the Greens are going for more centralized, so to say, care institutions. They want to centralize a little bit more, whereas maybe the Christian Democrats are a little bit more federalist leaning. So we see some changes in minor issues, but I think the big issue is now the central citizen insurance and the strike against private health insurers.
Yeah, that's true. I think that's now really the kind of big debate. I think I remember when we had the webinar in July, I think we're probably, I was at least also betting that it might be more kind of Christian Democrat plus the Greens in whichever kind of direction, right? Where I think it was quite clear that at least the kind of red green kind of coalition would be out of the scope. But I think now it could be maybe an option, especially maybe, I mean, as you already summarized quite nicely, that I think Olaf Scholz has, let's say, different messages, obviously, also to give because of the different kind of stakeholders within the party.
Yeah, but if you read between the lines now, the last months, it's an issue. It's not the hottest issue in the campaign, but it will be a big issue after the election, definitely. The parties will not discuss this issue because the Greens will lose definitely when the whole story is coming out. And also the other ones have not a real big interest to discuss this matter. But between the lines, if you read the FAZ or the NZZ, there's some hints that that will be it's a big case for the new government.
Yeah, very good. Perfect. Professor Wagschal, that was again a pleasure to discuss and to really see a bit and look forward to the election. Let's just see what will happen in roughly 2 weeks' time. It was great. And again, nice to talk to you. So thank you very much. And then talk to you soon again.
Okay, thank you.
So exciting elections coming up in Germany, end of September. Currently, the forecasts do not show a significant difference between the Social and the Christian Democrats, both basically in the lead. I think nobody really knows what will happen with the Greens. And I mean, what we have also just heard, I think there are methodologically some kind of, let's say, issues to really do a good kind of forecast. But at the end of the day, I think we might maybe see another win by either the Social or the Christian Democrats. And then I think the core question is obviously still be what might be the kind of coalition what we'll then see. Probably, according to Professor Wagschal, and I think I agree, not before beginning of next year. What does that all mean for healthcare? At the end of the day, I think there are two core and important points here to consider. One is what Professor Wagschal has already said. Might there be a potential change in the overall healthcare system, in the insurance kind of system, where we might more maybe see something like an NHS-like kind of system, more favored by the left, by the Social Democrats and by the Greens. So if this coalition might come into place, I think the likelihood is at least very high that something like an NHS system would be put into place. If not, obviously we need to see what might change. This is the kind of biggest potential change in the system, but there might be further ones. And I think that's also, what we have already seen, probably also in other countries. I mean, we have seen big impacts by the COVID-19 pandemic with a different kind of, let's say, parts and budgets which are being paid. I think a lot of times, obviously, making sense to be paid for into the economy in general, to the various companies, but also to individuals, to the people, especially now in the last 1.5 years. But also we have seen other kind of issues like the flood, for example, in North Rhine-Westphalia, which also has and will have a big impact on the budget overall. So I think what especially various stakeholders have already said, there will be a kind of impact on probably especially the drug prices. I think an easy target, the in quotes, please, enemy for some of the stakeholders at least. So that's something maybe to get prepared for. I think all of the other parts needs to be seen, especially when we come up and see how the elections resulted, and especially also afterwards, which might be maybe more towards Christmas, which is then which coalition will govern Germany. So stay tuned, and also check out our LinkedIn account on the day of the elections, which is the last Sunday of September 2021. That was an episode of MAP, the Market Access podcast provided by Mars Market Access and Pricing Strategy, which is your healthcare consultancy in the German-speaking markets. MAP is available every second week with a new episode, so watch out. And in case you might have questions, contact me directly and or visit our website on www.marketaccess-pricingstrategy.de.